This week's episode of The Obsessive Viewer is sponsored by Westworld FM, the latest podcast from the Midwest Podcast Network. Westworld FM seeks to dissect the latest episode of HBO's Westworld TV series every week. Join Alex and Nick as they take a deep dive into the latest TV show from producers Jonathan Nolan and J.J. Abrams. New episodes of the podcast are available on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, and more the day after the TV show airs. Check out the show at westworld.fm or search for Westworld FM on your favorite podcasting service. And thank you to Westworld FM and the Midwest Podcast Network for sponsoring this week's episode. This is Matt Hurt at Obsessive Viewer on Twitter.
This is Tiny at Obsessive Tiny on Twitter.
And this is ObsessiveViewer.com's The Obsessive Viewer Podcast. Hello and welcome to The Obsessive Viewer. We're a weekly movie and TV podcast that covers a specific topic, be it genre, trope, movie, or show, each episode. You can find back episodes at ovpodcast.com, find the blog at obsessiveviewer.com, and you can like us on Facebook and join the Facebook group at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer. So, let's see. Tiny, how's it going?
Wonderful, wonderful.
Great. This week on the podcast, do you know what we're talking about?
We are. The land of hearts.
That was just like, yeah. I just sprang that on you, and then, like, do you know what we're talking about? And then you said, we are.
I don't know.
God. I don't know either. This is a mess. Anyway, yes, so Heartland, that's what we're talking about today. That's all we're going to be talking about today on the podcast. Heartland Film Festival just celebrated their 25th year here in Indianapolis, and it's a fantastic festival. We had 2 episodes last year devoted to last year's Heartland Film Festival, and we were lucky enough to get press passes again this year, and we went to a bunch of screenings, and we're going to talk about the stuff that we saw. And interspersed throughout those discussions, we're going to throw in some interviews that I'd conducted throughout the film festival. So first up, we're just going to talk a little bit about our experience with the film festival itself. Tiny, how did you fare this year?
It was really great this year. I think I really just want to give an incredible thanks to everyone at Heartland, not only for, allowing us to be members of the press for it, but for running like a flawless event over 10 days.
Yeah.
I mean, it's incredible how doing a live event every year where we do Shocktober, we would screw up Heartland so bad because, I mean, you're just talking about hundreds of screenings over 10 days and people buying tickets a week in advance and people having all these questions, and you have ballots and you have filmmakers and actors and people there for interviews. I mean, and just having it all run seamlessly and flawlessly, and everyone is so helpful, and any issue or anything that I had, I was able to find an answer like right away. And
absolutely. And it's mind-blowing. Yeah, the sheer logistics of it is just kind of mind-blowing after we've done like Shocktober in Irvington 3 times. It's like not that they're remotely comparable, but it's so amazing to see just all the wheels spinning all the wheels moving and cogs moving for Heartland, because they do have to coordinate so much to run it so smoothly, and it's just really impressive the way that they can handle it year after year. And in addition to everything that Tiny said, they also do events like throughout the festival. So they had the opening and closing night, they had their awards night, they had a special 25th anniversary celebration night. And on top of all that, they had filmmakers from like a very big number of the films that were there, and they had Q&As after each screening. They had and the fact that they had that along with coordinating the screening times for it, it's the sheer logistics are really remarkable. And one thing I want to point out about it is that they reference that since this is the 25th year, they referenced that about they did some research, and less than 50% of all film festivals make it to their 25th year. So
wow,
that's really impressive for them to make it and be such a fixture in the community here in Indianapolis.
Agreed.
All right, so let's see. Let's just talk about a little bit of stats, really.
Okay.
First of all, last year I went to like 25 different screenings.
Wow.
Yeah, and this year I actually had time off from work, specifically for Heartland Film Festival, and then I kind of got a little under the weather about halfway through the week, and ended up not going to as many as I would have liked to, but I ended up going to 19 screenings.
Nice.
And in addition to that, we had we were part of the press email list for Heartland, so we got several screeners for films that were screening there, and unfortunately I didn't get a chance to see all of them that we got, but it was just amazing that we were included in that email list, and I really appreciate that from Heartland.
Agreed.
So let's just go ahead and dive right into the movies that we saw, or the screenings that we went to, and the films that we saw at Heartland this year. There's a lot to go through, and we're gonna kind of divide it up by shorts, narratives, and documentaries. So first, we're gonna kind of dive into the shorts that we saw. And Tiny, you saw 3, courtesy of the screeners that we got from the filmmakers. So if you could go ahead and dive in and let us know what you saw, and I promise I will. I've met my quota on the amount of times I can say dive in this recording.
Nice. Well, the first one I want to talk about is a movie called At Ease, which is about a soldier who comes home to attend the wedding of his ex-girlfriend, basically. Mm-hmm. And it's a really clever short because it's a dramedy, so it's challenging to blend two genres together in such a short time. They managed to pull it off pretty well with this movie. It's pretty. I really enjoyed it because it kind of shows both sides. I mean, it shows the bride, and it shows the guy who's coming home to attend. That's an awkward situation in and of itself, attending the wedding of your ex and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's a cool idea. It's not necessarily super original, but I think the fact that he's a soldier coming home makes it really interesting. And there's some kind of cliche characters like the main character's best friend who's kind of giving him all these goofy lines throughout it. But sometimes classic characters are some of the most entertaining. So I really enjoyed his buddy, giving him all those cliches and everything.
Sure.
It was a cool movie, and I really didn't know where it was going at the end. It went a little off the rails, as those kinds of stories are wont to do. But I enjoyed the way they did it, and I really didn't know what was going to happen at the end. So I think they took a bit of a used or cliched story and kind of made it their own with the ending. I enjoyed that. It was well done, and I liked all the acting and the script and everything. It didn't have that feeling of a short movie where like kind of an amateur film almost, like where you get people who don't know how to act. Like
right.
That I didn't get that feeling. Like even the small bit parts, everyone I think did a really good job. And it had good cinematography and camera work and everything. It felt really good. It was a good movie.
Nice. I saw it too, and I enjoyed it too. Maybe not quite as much as you did. I just kind of thought it was pretty good, but it didn't really have that much of a lasting effect on me. But to each their own. I mean, that's totally cool.
Awesome. Then one of the other ones I saw was it's called Future Boyfriend. This was a straight up comedy, really funny short, and just a fantastic idea for a movie. Basically, it involves time travel, and it involves a first date. I don't want to give everything away.
Right.
I just don't want to spoil it. But it's just a really clever idea. It's like one of those things where, like, time travel nerds or people who think about that kind of stuff, you think up scenarios for how you would use time travel, and this is kind of a funny one. I mean, it's pretty unique, but I think it's something that's well within the realm of what people have thought about involving time travel. Like, what would you go back in time to do, or what would you go into the future to do? This is a funny scenario, and I hope people get to see it, because I really don't want to spoil it, but I want people to see it.
Right.
It's really funny, and it's well written, and it's simple, but again, you're kind of curious as to where it's going to go. I think it was really clever, and I really enjoyed this one.
Me too. I saw that one as well. And first of all, I just want to mention that At Ease was directed by Jacob Kirby and written by Jacob Kirby, Matt Scruggs, and Josh Barkey. And I have the... So Future Boyfriend was directed by Ben Rock and written by A. Vincent Ulrich. It was based on it was actually based on a stage play. It was adapted from that. And I saw this too, and man, did I love it. Did I love it. It was so great. Like, this was a short film that was kind of made for me.
Yeah. Yeah, it was.
And what it does what all great science fiction does that I gravitate to, is it takes its science fiction premise and it uses it to showcase a really human scenario or have a great characterization come out of it. So in this short film, it's two people on a first date, one of which has the ability to time travel. And what that plot necessitates from a character perspective and a story perspective here is that it shows a character. It shows how a character can have plans for their life planned out, and then there's an interesting thing that happens in which they are confronted with the idea that none of their plans for themselves are going to work out at all, and it's also at the expense of a relationship and there are a lot of moving pieces to it, and I just really thought it was really phenomenal. It was a really great short film, and it's called Future Boyfriend.
Yep.
And yeah, and if I can find links to the websites for the everything that we're going to talk about, I'll throw it into the show notes of this episode, so that if you are curious about it, you can check it out. You can either check it out in the show notes of the episode or at obsessiveviewer.com/OV191.
Awesome.
Okay, so Tiny, what was the what was the third short that you saw?
The third short that I got to see, all of you can go see it right now. It's available across the internet. It's one of the latest short films from Pixar. Mm-hmm. It's called Borrowed Time. And it's, I think, written, produced, and directed by Andrew Coates and Lou. This is a difficult last name, Hamujaj or something like that. I apologize. I don't know how to pronounce the last name. But these are two guys who work at Pixar, and I think they took like 5 or 6 years in their spare time to make this 6-minute movie, mm-hmm. Which is remarkable dedication. This is my favorite of the bunch, and I hate to say that because it's the most mainstream of these three, but mm-hmm. it's just a remarkable movie. I may have tweeted this. I don't remember. I either tweeted it or said it, that I managed to smile, laugh, gasp, and cry in the span of 6 minutes.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just insane that they can tap into all those different emotions in 6 minutes and do it with the most beautiful animation you will ever see. It is so gorgeous, this movie. It's just like the detail involved in the animation just blew me away. And it's a very visually based story in that there's almost no dialogue. There's almost no dialogue whatsoever. Mm-hmm. But you just cannot take your eyes off this movie. It's just remarkable, and it tackles some of the deepest and most deeply seated emotions that a person can have. And again, it does it all in 6 minutes. It's just a remarkable movie. It's called Borrowed Time. Just Google it. I think it's on YouTube, and it's on some other websites. Please go watch it. It's only 6 minutes of your time. It's incredible.
And so I didn't get a chance to see this one.
Oh, wow. I'm shocked, yeah. Pixar fanboy.
I know, and I was planning on seeing it because it was part of one of the... it was actually a finalist for the... a shorts finalist. And it... they had 2 shorts finalists blocks of films to screen. Mm-hmm. And this was in finalists 2. And I went to finalist 1. I just didn't have time to see the second one, and then I was so busy the entire time, I just hadn't had time to squeeze out the 6 minutes. So anyway, I'll have to check that out because that sounds incredible.
It is fantastic. So what kind of shorts did you dive into, Matt?
Let's see. I see what you did there, Daddy. So I attended several shorts blocks, a total of 4. And instead of going through each one individually, and I hate to do this, but just in terms of timing, I'll give my thoughts on each short. Like, I'll highlight a couple shorts from each block.
Okay.
That I want to talk about. So, cool. The first block of short films I saw was the sci-fi block, which included Future Boyfriend. So, check mark there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to kind of talk about a couple short films that were in this block. First of all, there was a short film called Icarus. Icarus was directed by Tom Teller and written by Tom Teller and Andrew Gustafaro. And the plot description, I'll just read from the guidebook here. When a Mars colony's comm satellite is damaged, Amelia Riley embarks on a seemingly harmless repair excursion. But when a shuttle malfunction cuts connectivity to the ground, Chris, her son, makes the knee-jerk decision to go after her. And the thing that really, obviously, being a science fiction fan myself, obviously, when I go to either Indie Film Fest or Heartland or any kind of film event like this, I'm gravitating toward the science fiction screenings and ones that kind of speak to me on that level. So I made sure to make one of my first screenings to be the sci-fi block of shorts. And Icarus was a really strong short film in this block, if only because the amount of visual effects and visual effects on the screen was just remarkable. It was really a really cleverly made and really pristine looking film. Like the main character of Chris, he has this kind of like robotic companion that reminded me of Claptrap from the Borderlands video games.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it was just like that kind of aesthetic, and he's like his little buddy, and you really get a sense that even though this is a 20-minute short, you get the sense that these characters live on Mars, and it's a Mars colony, of course. And as it progresses, you really feel the emotion of some of the events that go on, and it has hints of like The Martian and Gravity and other films like that. So you kind of get like, that's a good idea of what you're in for if you check this out. So anyway, I really enjoyed it. It was called Icarus, and I thought that it was really, really well done. And then the next one is a short film called Uncanny Valley. It was from Argentina, actually. So it's directed by Federico Heller and written by him as well. And what this short film was about, I'll go ahead and read the plot description again. In the slums of the future, virtual reality junkies satisfy their violent impulses in online entertainment. An expert player discovers that the line between game and reality is fading. And this was such a cool short film.
Nice.
It was, you see these depictions of, like, it opens with a character going through this virtual reality gaming area, like he's kind of doing badass things, and it's like this really impressive visualization of virtual reality gaming in this future world. And then it's juxtaposed with a kind of documentary style thing where you show them outside of the game and they're speaking to, like, talking heads into the camera, and you see that everything around them is just decrepit and really it looks like it's like, obviously the very clear allegory is drug junkies living in squalor and filth, because their real world is this virtual reality. And the places that the plot takes it are really impressive, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. So I highly recommend it if you can find it. It's Uncanny Valley. That's
impressive. This whole festival, I've been blown away by short films and these tiny little independent movies tackling huge subjects, and like to have a short film with what I can only assume is a shoestring budget, tackling something like virtual reality or a whole other planet. Mm-hmm. That's just incredible that people have the passion and the drive to do something that big with on such a small scale. Like, I'm just blown away by people's passion to do these movies despite everything they have to overcome to make them.
Absolutely.
And those sound like some prime examples.
Right. Yep.
Cool.
And so the next block of short films I saw is comedy, the shorts block of comedy short films. And I want to highlight first The Immaculate Misconception, directed by Michael Gioan. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Okay.
And written by him and Simon Riley. So we actually got a screener of this short film, and it's really, like, the plot description is when 16-year-old Sinead O'Reilly announces she is pregnant, her grandmother attempts to get the birth proclaimed immaculate by the Vatican. And there are some really, there are some really funny bits throughout it, but what really surprised me was the ending, which I can't really give away here, but there was a lot of really good elements to it, and then it kind of came together in a really fascinating way at the end that I really enjoyed. So I highly recommend checking that out if you get the chance.
Cool.
But the one that I really want to spend a lot of time on this is it's a short film called The Goodbye, and it was directed by Mike P. Nelson and written by Brett Andres. So, okay, the plot description, this is just the one sentence plot description, is after the death of his muse, a forlorn writer struggles to reignite his creative mojo. Oh my God, this short film. Like, I was really, really affected by this. I thought it was really amazing. The way that it works is that it's a short film about this writer who he wakes up, goes to his typewriter and or his computer, and figures, okay, well, he's a screenwriter, he needs to write. So he opens up his folder of screenplays he's working on, and there's a bunch of different ones that he's working on that are in progress. And there's like one about ninjas, one about a squirrel, and then there's a romantic comedy. So we see, and I won't give much away about it, but we see, like, as soon as he starts working on one, we see that there's, like, we're transitioned into what is essentially a waiting room of all of the characters that he's writing in each movie. So all these characters are sitting in a waiting room, and they're waiting to be, like, worked on and called up and written. So the short film is freaking, like that's funny. That's a funny premise, but it goes to such an emotionally resonant place that, like, I mean, I was getting choked up, like tears were streaming down my face. It was really a powerful, powerful short film.
Wow.
Oh yeah. It becomes this piece about, mourning and grieving and, how you use creativity to get over something or to move past something that is blocking you from moving on. And it's how a creative mind can really work through their issues by using their creative energy, and how they owe it to their characters. And there's so much to it, and it's just so amazing because there's a scene in it where the writer sits down and speaks to the main character of one of his scripts, who is based on he's writing the character based on his love that passed away per the plot description. Mm-hmm. So it's like him working out his grief by talking to this character. And it's such an amazing short film. I cannot recommend it enough. It's called The Goodbye. I don't know if it's online anywhere, but check it out. It's directed by Mike P. Nelson and written by Brett Andres. It's just amazing.
That sounds incredible.
It really is. I definitely recommend checking it out if you can.
Okay.
Yep. Okay, so the next block of shorts I'm going to talk about, and my last one actually, is the relationships block, which includes some good ones, but I'm just going to go ahead and highlight one here that really, really affected me. And this short film was called Set Adrift. And oh man, okay, so the short film was directed by Jennifer Sheridan and Matthew Markham and written by Jennifer Sheridan. And the plot description per the guidebook for Heartland was, when Patch's beloved owner goes missing, he is forced to work out what is real and what is just his memory. This was, oh my God, this was just an incredible short film. So this is essentially about a dog whose owner passes away, and it's the grieving process as told specifically from the dog's point of view. And it was unbelievably moving and incredible. Like, the way that it's put together or the way that it's filmed is astounding. Like that premise calls for some really interesting visual cues, and it's dependent on the acting prowess of a dog, really. And it's, I mean, like, it was incredibly moving because you feel how heartbroken this dog is. And that's kind of a silly thing to say, but it's really remarkable because you're following this dog through just simple things as like just sitting around at home and walking around. So like there's a scene, and I'm not going to give away a lot of this movie because I really, really want people to see it. So there's a scene where the dog is laying down and they hear the door open, and it is the it's the significant other of the owner that died. So, but you see since it's from the dog's perspective, you see like a flash of what the dog assumes he assumes that it's his owner. And so that's kind of a running thing throughout it. It's like you see, it's kind of weird to say this, but you see the dog's mind processing what happened and processing the loss, and it's just unbelievably moving, and it's really incredible, and it really resonated with me. And I don't know how personal I want to get on here with this, but back in February, my father passed away, and a lot of, obviously, you know, that was a really terrible time and everything, and it's fun to bring up on a podcast. But one of the things that I noticed when my family was going through that ordeal, we were slowly losing my dad. My parents have 3 dogs, and one of them was kind of like my dad's companion, like Toby. We actually got my sister got him for my mom, but my dad just kind of took ownership of him, sort of. Mm-hmm. And so, as my dad was getting worse, it was really, I mean, obviously it was heartbreaking and tragic and terrible, the entire experience. But one of the things I noticed was that Toby was really, like, he sensed what was happening. And like, I've never seen a dog cry until Toby. Wow. Like, his eyes were glazed over, and like he could tell that something was not right. And even when my father passed, Toby ran after when they came and when the funeral home came and took my dad's body, Toby ran out and chased the car.
Wow.
Yeah. So anyway, so having that in my recent memory, and that's obviously all of that whole experience is never going to leave me, but going into Set Adrift by Jennifer Sheridan, just like having that depicted, seeing that depicted on screen in this short film is like, it was just incredibly moving to me, and it really resonated with me, maybe more than any other movie that I saw at Heartland.
Wow.
Yeah, it was the single most powerful piece of filmmaking that I saw at Heartland.
That sounds so good.
Yeah, it is really incredible. And I posted about it on Facebook, on the Facebook page, and I tweeted about it. It was funny because I posted about it on the Facebook page, and I made sure I tagged the Set Adrift Facebook page on it. And then I was so just wrapped up in how powerful it was that I found the director and writer's Twitter account or Twitter name and followed her, and then I was writing out a tweet to her, and then as soon as I sent the tweet saying I really thought it was powerful, blah blah blah, I looked on Facebook and I already had a notification from her commenting on the Facebook page, Facebook post saying like, "Oh, it's really nice" and everything. So I thought that was kind of funny.
Yeah, it was. What she said was really nice too. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's Set Adrift by Jennifer Sheridan, and it was really incredible. And if you can find it, I highly recommend checking it out.
Awesome.
All right, and so to kind of round out our shorts section of this episode, they had this really cool VR film thing going on. You weren't there Wednesday or Thursday, were you?
No, I didn't get to experience that.
Okay, so what happened is that there's a really interesting organization that goes to like Africa and gives them clean water and things like that. It's called Thirst Project, and what they had at Heartland was this virtual reality film that they created with two back-to-back 180 cameras that you put on the, I think it was Oculus headset, and have headphones in, and then you looked around and you saw like you were in the film. And it was like a short documentary film, about 7 minutes long. And I really thought it was an incredible experience, just as a film going endeavor. Just being able to like be in the film experience. Like virtual reality right now is kind of like it's taking off in terms of from a consumer level for gaming and stuff like that. And I'm really, really curious to see what kind of applications it has for filmmaking and film going forward. And this was a really interesting experience. I was fortunate enough to be able to interview one of the people there from Thirst Project about it. So I'm going to go ahead and just cut to that interview here. And then when we come back, we will talk about narrative films that we saw at Heartland. Okay, I'm here with Luke from the Thirst Project, who has a virtual reality film playing here at Heartland. They have a nice display out with the Oculus headsets playing throughout the last couple days. By the time this is up, obviously it's after the festival. So, but yeah. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Tell us about the Thirst Project and about the virtual reality experience and everything.
Absolutely. My name is Luke Romick, and I'm the head of development and events here at the Thirst Project. And we put together this VR film with two 180-degree cameras shooting back-to-back. So it's a completely immersive 360-degree experience. You can't move around within the film, but you can look every single degree around. And we take you into a community called Matsanjeni, which is a community that has no access to safe, clean drinking water. So we take you, the first half of the film takes you through the community, seeing what it's like without access to clean water, then transitioning you to the implementation of a clean water well and what effect that has on the community both emotionally and physically. And it is narrated the entire time by our community director in Swaziland by the name of Sibo Sisu Shiba.
Excellent. And this was my first experience with anything with VR or anything. I've heard a lot of things about the experience of VR and especially with like obviously VR gaming and everything. But from a filmmaking perspective, it's really interesting. Just I'm fascinated by all of the different applications that it could mean for it. And what I found really moving about the film, it's about 7 minutes long. 7 minutes. About 7 minutes long, and it's so immersive. And this type of story, the story of different cultures from people, like we're here in the United States, and it's like you see documentaries and you see things online about suffering around the world and issues around the world, and it's not as tangible as like here. Like we can't really. There's a disconnect there, and what I felt was really interesting about this was that it's immersive. You can look around and everything. Like I found myself very brought into the experience and like looking around and seeing all of the people and everything, and it was a very immersive experience, and I thought it was really interesting. Can you speak to like the challenges of creating that, or was there like how, in terms of like creating something like that, what are some of the considerations to put into it when you have two 180-degree cameras back to back?
Absolutely. So the biggest challenge we faced was having a shooter, so someone to shoot the video, and then we started to realize no matter where you stood, you were always in the shot. And so we would set up a tripod about 500, 600 feet away from where we were located as a production team, and then had to leave the shot entirely, keep the camera running, and then set up the scene to do that without anybody there. So the biggest challenge was, no matter what, you're shooting 360 degrees, so you could hold the camera above your head, you're still going to see you underneath it. Mm-hmm. And so that was really the biggest challenge. And then in the production editing side of things, really stitching together the shots to make it look as clean and as almost like panorama as possible. And kind of speaking to what you had said about how virtual reality was, you were there and you had a more immersive experience. I think the real difference between virtual reality and whether it's a documentary or me and you talking face to face or hearing it on the radio, there's one thing where you can hear it and see it and know what the issue is, but when there is no way to escape the reality of 360 degrees around you, there's nothing you can do but face the issue and face the real emotional value of what you're going through. And so I think it's such a unique way to tell a story. And there's really, like, even in a movie theater, you could pull out your phone. Mm-hmm. You can't do that when you're in virtual reality because you're so locked in, and it's just that immersive full body experience.
That's exactly right. And that's something that's, it's funny because we're so connected to our phones and to like distractions and like currently today that it's such a unique experience to be in an experience where you're torn away from those distractions, and it really helps with the story being told to you. So can you tell us more about the Thirst Project and where we can find it online and information about it?
Yeah, so the Thirst Project is a nonprofit organization that started about 7.5 years ago in Los Angeles, California. The founder and CEO, Seth Maxwell, was friends with a Times photographer, and she showed him image after image of people walking for water in South Sudan, and he was so shook by this, he was like, what am I going to do? I'm a college student. All I want to do is act. I'm in Los Angeles. I'm here for myself. And so the next day, he met someone at church who was a hydrologist, and it was almost like fate that it was, here's what you can do. This is how much money you need to raise to fully fund a well and things like that. So he and his 7 college buddies gathered up $70, all they had between them, went to Hollywood Boulevard with about 100 water bottles, passing them out to people saying, here's the issue at hand. What are you going to do about it? And at the time, 7.5 years ago, it was 1.1 billion people without access to clean water. Wow. Just a staggering number, just blows your mind. Mm-hmm. And so in 7 years, the Thirst Project has been able to raise $8 million by speaking at schools, high schools, colleges, middle schools alike, and activating students to take change. We speak on about 300 different campuses every single year, activating around 300,000 students. And then on the other side of things, we use a lot of celebrity endorsements and corporate partnerships to help fund our operations so that 100% of any public donation goes to the actual work that we do.
Nice.
Absolutely. And so you can find us on social media anywhere at Thirst Project. Thirsty without the Y, project is what we like to say. Nice. And then thirstproject.org, you can request a speaker to come, whether you're a company, a person, have a group of people, a school, request a speaker for anything, find out more information and ways to get involved.
Excellent. That's awesome, and that's a fantastic cause as well. Is this VR experience going to be traveling to any other places in the near future?
So we're submitting the VR film to other film festivals right now. We're thinking about bringing it out to South by Southwest. And we're really just finding an experiential way to share this story and not just have pop-up banners with high top tables. And so sure. The issue of a nonprofit is we don't have the budgets to put together these beautiful activations that Samsung and Oculus and Facebook can all do. So we really have to leverage partnerships in order to create those really unique experiences and really tell the story the way we want to. But we think right now with the VR world and all the money being put behind VR, which we had been talking about earlier, I think there's a lot of room for growth and a lot of potential for some really impactful change.
Absolutely, and best of luck with Thirst Project and the VR experience and everything going forward. And it just seems like such a burgeoning technology that's it's very interesting to see what's gonna happen in the future as far as narratives and things like that, and especially with applications for having such a worthwhile cause to really bring people into. It's a really remarkable technology, and I was very excited about this, so that was awesome.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for talking to me, and once again, you can find it at where's the website?
thirstproject.org.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you so much, and hope you have a great rest of the festival here.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, and I'll put links to all that in the show notes of this episode as well, and at obsessiveviewer.com/OV191. All right, Tiny, so why don't we go ahead and talk about some narrative films that we saw?
Absolutely.
All right, why don't you get us kicked off with what you saw?
Yes, the first movie that I actually got to see for the whole festival was a movie called Persona Non Grata. It was directed by a Japanese gentleman named Chelin Gluck, who was there for the screening. I didn't really get to meet him or anything, but it was a really good movie. It was a period piece. It was about a Japanese diplomat during World War II who was stationed in Lithuania, and he basically used his power to grant visas, like travel visas to people, to allow all of the Jewish population, not all obviously, but a large number of the Jewish population of the capital of Lithuania to get out of Lithuania before the Germans and the Nazis made their way to Lithuania and took over Lithuania, which they eventually did. At the time, the Soviet Union kind of took over Lithuania and occupied Lithuania and was not allowing anyone to leave and was about to, cease travel for anyone. And so this diplomat gave travel visas, Japanese travel visas, to thousands of Lithuanian Jews in the period of a couple weeks, while he still had the power to do so. He's almost like the Japanese Oskar Schindler, if you will. Obviously a lot less involved and everything, but it's a true story, and I had never even heard of this guy. I don't know if I'm going to pronounce his name right, but it's Chihun or Shiun Sugihara. Google him and look him up, read a book about him, or please go see this movie. It's an incredible story that I just knew nothing about, and the movie's really well done. I'm just impressed with the fact that you have, an independent movie that has a small budget and has so many things to overcome, but Chelin Gluck chose to tell a period story about people from all different countries and all different walks of life in 1940. It's like, that's just an incredible thing to do. There's the logistics and the scale of the movie is really impressive. It takes place, from the earliest scenes of the movie to the latest, it takes place over 20 plus years. And you have people speaking Japanese, people speaking Chinese, Russian, Lithuanian, English, couple other languages thrown in there, I think. And you go to Moscow, you go to Japan and China and Lithuania, and it's just incredible. Berlin, Munich, all these different places. It's just incredible the scale of the movie, what they were able to accomplish from an independent standpoint and from a small startup movie, if you will. It's not some big budget movie. It's just incredible what they achieved with this. I will say the movie was a little long. I think it could have used a little bit more editing. I think it had a couple of endings that could have been chopped off or kept to, kind of brought together, I guess, or joined up, and it would have made it a little smoother. But I really can't complain, again, because everything was just so impressive with this movie. There was a Polish character that I related to a lot because when I was in Poland and I talked to my family members, they still have opinions about being occupied by the Soviets for so long and everything. And so I got to talk to people who dealt with that firsthand, and to hear this Polish character have some of the same sentiment, that really resonated with me, and really that was my in. That got me hooked in this movie. Not that I necessarily needed anything else, because it was such an interesting story. But that meant a lot to me, and the Lithuanians and the Poles have a very close relationship and have had for hundreds of years. So that kind of resonated with me. And just the fact that this is just a remarkable story, that this guy was he was an idealist, and he wanted to be a diplomat because he was interested in peace and bringing people together and cultures and governments working together instead of, being at war. And he used that idea to save all these people. And he saved a couple thousand people, and I don't remember the exact statistic, but I think there are like 30 or 40,000 descendants of the people that he helped get out of Lithuania.
Oh, wow.
The Jewish population. So, I mean, that's an incredible statistic that's listed at the end of Schindler's List. Mm-hmm. I think it's something like 20,000 people at the time that movie was made are descendants of the Schindler Jews, if you will. So I think this guy had... That story's so famous and that movie's so famous, and it is for a good reason. Mm. And I think this guy should be equally as famous because I think his work was just as important and his story is just as important and remarkable. So, I liked the movie. I had issues with it, but I don't care because the story, like I said, the story's so incredible and I was so moved by it. I really hope everyone can see it at some point. It actually was made last year. Mm-hmm. But it's been released more widely this year. I think it was somewhat successful in Japan, where the filmmaker's from.
Oh, nice.
So I hope it gets a wide release, and I hope people can, maybe check it out on DVD. I highly recommend it. I wish I could have met the filmmaker, but I didn't have time. It was a weeknight. It was late, and I couldn't talk to him or anything.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. It's great. I recommend it. Please try to find it if you can.
Nice. And what other narratives did you see?
Yeah, the other one, we actually got to see this one together.
We did.
Was, To Keep the Light. It was directed by and starred Erica Faye. This was a pretty interesting movie. I was interested in it because it seemed like such a specific story. Mm-hmm. It's about a female lighthouse keeper in Maine in the 1870s, I believe. Mm-hmm. It's what struck me about it is again, it was such a specific story that I was just curious what inspired the filmmaker and the writers to tackle the story, and what was it about it that this story needed to be told. Mm-hmm. And the specificity of it made it really unique and unlike any movie I'd ever seen. Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of stories out there about lighthouse keepers in the 1870s in Maine.
Right.
It's just a kind of a really unique story, and so that's what drew me to it. Unfortunately, I think the movie it was very, very slowly paced. There's not a lot of action in it, and there's not a lot of gravitas to it. It's all very plain. And I think maybe that was strategic on the part of the filmmaker, but I think it worked against the movie a little bit. I think there could have been a little bit more drama and a little bit more spark to some of the scenes. Some of the dialogue was just pretty drab, and it could have been punched up a little bit to make it more interesting. But I really appreciated the performance of Erica Faye. I think she did a good job as a very troubled person who kind of finds their way. I thought it was a really good performance, and again, just the uniqueness of it. It's kind of, the movie's based on some true stories. I don't know exactly how true the story is per se, the specific story, but it's inspired by some really cool events and some very unique people, and I respect it for that. It was just a really slowly paced movie. It kept my attention, but I could see a lot of people trying to watch this and getting bored, unfortunately.
It
had its flaws.
Right. I agree. And I mean, we, like you said, we saw this together, and it's worth mentioning that this movie was shot on location on an island off the coast of northern Maine.
Right.
And you can really, it's really spectacular to look at. And it's another movie that it's a period movie,
right? And
it's remarkable to see the detail that's put into these films. I thought that it was pretty okay. It didn't really grab me that much, but I echo a lot of the sentiments that you had for it.
Nice.
Yep. And Erica Faye also wrote the script.
Did she write it too? Okay, wow. She She went full in on this one.
Yeah.
I thought it was good. And so those are the only narratives I really got to see.
Okay. I'll go ahead and go into mine.
Sure.
Okay, so I saw a bunch of films here, so I'm just going to kind of go through some and highlight some of the ones that I saw. So because so we can kind of save on time here. Mm-hmm. So the first one is much like To Keep the Light. This movie was a period movie. It's called Girl Flu. And it's literally a period movie. It was written and directed by Dory Barton, and it stars Katie Sackhoff. And it's about, the plot description is Bird, a 12-year-old wise beyond her years, finds herself having to take care of her fun but flighty stoner of a mom, Jenny. When Bird is humiliated by getting her first period at the school picnic, the delicate balance at home blows up as Bird and Jenny struggle to navigate the onslaught of change and raging hormones. So this movie, Girl Flu, was really good. I really enjoyed it, and you can actually find it at Girl Flu Movie on Twitter and Facebook.com/GirlFluMovie. It was really fun and really funny, but it was also a really interesting exploration of what it is to be a girl that's lost in this new grown-up predicament that she's in, having her first period. Granted, I have no context for how this is, but I thought it was really good. And what stood out to me were the performances. Katie Sackhoff does a really great job of playing this kind of dysfunctional mother. And Jeremy Sisto actually appears in the movie as her boyfriend, who's kind of this mentor / kind of fatherly figure to the main character. But Jade Pettyjohn, who played Bird, she was freaking fantastic. She did such a great job.
Nice. And
it's really amazing to see that from such a young actress. And there's a scene where kind of the drama gets to a boiling point between Bird and her mother, and they are screaming at each other, and like it's such a powerful scene, like such a powerful dramatic scene, and they're going toe to toe with each other with words. And Jade Pettyjohn just is so remarkable at selling exactly what her character is going through, and it's really impactful that way. I thought it was really well done. I really enjoyed it. It's called Girl Flu, and hopefully you'll get a chance to see it at some point.
Nice.
Yep. And I like that the promotional material, the cards that they had, the postcards that they had on the tables, it has like, it lists it as or like the promotional cards and stuff said that it's a period movie. I thought that was clever. Okay, so next up that I'm going to talk about is a movie that we actually have an interview for that I'll put at the end of this section of the podcast. It's called Trivia Night. Directed by Robert Gregson and written by Addison Anderson, Colin Drummond, Michael Molina, and stars Addison Anderson, Colin Drummond, and Michael Molina. So this movie it's a comedy about, I'll read part of the plot description here. When the unbeaten game show Trivia Night announces that its final episode will bring back a single past contestant, obsessive trivia buff Scott Nadler strives to overcome its brain-breaking preliminary trials, defeat the world's trivia aces, and earn a second chance on the show that once embarrassingly eliminated him on his first question. So this is a comedy, and it's, as the plot description alluded to, it's about this guy who is an obsessive trivia buff. And he is such a fascinating character because he is so wrapped up in, like, he makes his living in the film. He makes his living earning prizes from bar trivia nights. So that's how he earns a living. He's that good at it.
Wow.
And what I loved about this movie was that it exists in this weird otherly world where like the character of Scott, played by Addison Anderson, he's kind of in his own world. He's almost the he's kind of the too smart for his own good kind of character, and he is kind of he's kind of an asshole. And it's really captivating. Like I was still drawn to his story, and I was really impressed with it, and it was interesting. You'll hear more about it when we get to the interview portion of it, but Addison, the main actor in it, he said that he had women come up to him after screening saying that that character is like the type of person that they've dated in the past and tried to get away from. And it's like it's a really fascinating character for this particular story, because it's a comedy, and it's not like he's not like a terrible human being or anything. He's this really like know-it-all guy who is still really has his own charms and is really he's really quick-witted, and it's really captivating to watch. And he always has these little quips and stuff, but it always feels very genuine. And there's a lot of information about the writing process in the interview that you'll hear here in a bit. But it's a really great movie. I thought that, above all else, I thought that it was just a really fun movie, and you'll hear more about it here in a minute. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's called Trivia Night, and I hope you can check it out.
Sounds awesome.
Oh, yeah. Next up is, I'll be kind of brief with this one, Pushing Dead. Written and directed by Tom E. Brown. This movie is, it stars James Roday and Danny Glover. James Roday he was the main actor in the movie, or not the movie, but the TV show Psych, which I watched one season of. Yeah.
Nice.
Very charismatic actor. Like, just right off the bat, he's a really charismatic guy. The plot description, a little bit of it is, when Dan, a struggling writer who has been HIV positive for 20 plus years, deposits a $100 birthday check, he is dropped from his health plan for earning too much. In this new era of sort of universal health care, can he take on a helpless bureaucracy or come up with $3,000 a month to buy meds on his own? And this was a really kind of touching comedy.
I really wanted to see this one.
Yeah, it was really good. I enjoyed it. There's a lot to it, obviously. There's kind of a subplot involving Danny Glover and his wife that I could kind of do without.
Okay.
But the main plot of Dan and his issues with getting his medicine for, HIV is really well done, really drawn out really well. I'm really curious how much of James Roday injected his own personality into it, because he kind of has this energy to him that's kind of similar to his character in Psych, but it's more grounded than that. In Psych, he's like this kind of wacky, know-it-all kind of guy. A very perceptive guy, I should say. And in here, he's more grounded and he has more issues. There's some really powerful like acting moments from him as well in this movie, and I really enjoyed it. There's a lot of really poignant scenes where he's dealing with getting his medicine, and I really enjoyed it. It was one of the finalists at Heartland this year.
Nice.
Yeah. So yeah. Okay, and the last narrative movie that I saw that I'll talk about here in this podcast is The Merry Maids of Madness, which was directed by Philip Hughes and written by Jen Doherty. And so this movie, I'll really quickly read a plot summary. The Merry Maids of Madness is a feature-length comedy inspired by the women of Shakespeare that tells the story of Beatrice, who, after walking out of her wedding for a sandwich, decides to take a rest at the Stratford home for rest and rehabilitation. Beatrice soon realizes that if she wants to get out, she'll need a plan and the help of her unusual cohorts. So this movie was really charming, incredibly charming. And it made me really wish that I knew more Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I'm woefully uneducated on Shakespeare, but the references that I could pick up here and there, the more overt one is that there's each woman in the ward that Beatrice is in is representative of a woman from Shakespeare's work. And for example, the more overt one is a character of Julie, who is lovelorn and wants to see her beloved, who is banned from coming to the ward. Obviously paralleling Juliet from Romeo and Juliet.
Okay.
And then there are like three old I believe, and I'll look like an idiot if I'm wrong on this, but there's no other way that this could be construed otherwise. But there are 3 elderly ladies who they go to for advice or for help with one of Beatrice's plans, and it's like clearly like they're the three witches from
Hamlet,
Macbeth. From Macbeth.
Good call.
Yeah, and
I don't know Shakespeare either, apparently.
Yeah. Well, the only reason I could remember Macbeth is because Throne of Blood from Kurosawa.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, 3 women that they go to for advice and help during one of Beatrice's plans is patterned after the 3 witches from Macbeth, and it was a really fun movie. There's a lot of really fun stuff in it, and it was nice to see that. It was nice to see that movie, and like one of the things that I really like about Heartland is that there's a lot of like really deep, kind of emotionally charged movies, and it's nice to kind of get a balance of comedy and drama this year from Heartland's selection. So I feel like I did a pretty good job with the narratives with that, because Merry Maids of Madness was fun and energetic, as well as like Girl Flu, and Trivia Night was fun as well. And then I saw a bunch of kind of more dark and dramatic movies as well.
Okay.
Okay, next up we're going to talk about documentaries, but first I'm going to cut to our my review with the guys from Trivia Night, the movie that I talked about a few minutes ago. So enjoy that interview, and then when we come back, we will talk about documentaries. Okay, so I'm here at Heartland Film Festival with Robert, Addison, and Michael from the film Trivia Night. It's been a long day. All right, so we just got out of the film, and it is such a spectacularly fun movie, and it's hilarious, and it's really great. So why don't you guys just introduce yourselves? Tell the recorder here what your role was in the film.
I know this is a podcast, so you can't see that we have a gun to his head to say those nice things. But my name is Michael. I was a co-writer, co-producer, and I co-starred in it as well. I played Grimly, this shaggy Muppet of a friend.
I'm Robert Gregson, the director, and I was responsible for wrangling all these guys.
And I'm Addison Anderson with Michael over here and Colin. I co-wrote it, and I starred as Scott Nadler, the trivia king of New York City, who is trying to take down the quiz show that ruined his life.
Great, thanks guys, and yeah, that premise alone is just so just perfect for comedy, and it had this. You guys in the Q&A mentioned that Scott is like this. I can't remember the phrasing that you used. An underdog, but a certain type of underdog. Can you speak to that? Because I thought that was just so beautifully pinpointed exactly what the character was.
Yeah. I think I thought of Scott when playing him as a toxic underdog. This guy who kind of thinks of himself the way that we think of the main character of an underdog type of comedy movie. But really underneath that, there is, over the course of his journey, all this anger and pushing people away that comes out. And so even though you're still rooting for him and laughing along with him and seeing him as the main character, you're also realizing that there's something really bad that he's doing. And so it's kind of an underdog movie that becomes a monster movie at the end, and he is the monster. So yeah, it was really, really fun to play that, and I think for a low-budget comedy that still has this very, very kind of high-concept, relatable premise, it's an interesting character to put at the center of it. So, yeah.
Absolutely, and I love just the way that you portrayed him was he's such a he's kind of this cocksure kind of guy, and it's kind of you can kind of see him alienating so many people, but you really are with him throughout the whole movie, and it's so much fun just to see that. It seems like a really fun role to play. Yeah.
After we screened the movie to some people, some women came up to us and were like, I had to learn not to date guys like that because they seem they seem nice at the start, but that's because they're just trying to differentiate themselves from all these people they have these toxic grudges against. And so yeah, it was really fun to play that kind of that just edge of pushing people away and while still being funny and compelling. So
That's fantastic. Yeah. So this movie was Kickstarter. It was kickstarted. You guys started out doing sketch comedy. Can you speak about your history and about the Kickstarter campaign for it and everything?
Yeah. Sure. So we started as a sketch comedy group called Local Empire, and we basically decided to make 10 sketch videos a month, and we would have a monthly show in New York, and we would take whatever we made at the door and fund the next 10 videos. And so we made 100 videos that way, actually 106 videos. And that totaled like 300 minutes of content plus. And so we were like, we've made 300 minutes, like we can probably make an 80-minute movie. And so from the fans that we had gained while doing sketch comedy, we did a Kickstarter and we raised $35,000 and were able to put together a budget. And when Robert Rodriguez made his first movie, Mariachi, he was like, all right, I've got $6,000, I've got this town in Mexico, and I've got these actors, this is what I can do. And so we looked at the money that way. We're like, we got $35,000, we've got these actors, we've got New York, where we drink and hang out in apartments. So we're like, what's a movie that can take place in bars and apartments? And trivia night at bars kind of jumped into our heads, and we made a movie around that.
That's fantastic. And this is, if I'm not mistaken, this is your first feature film that you've done. It looks so beautiful from every aspect of it. It looks like you're seasoned filmmaker. So I was really impressed with just the production value of it, and it just looks amazing. And also the script is so freaking tight. Like it's incredible. Like what was the scripting process like? What was the screenwriting process like on it? Was it how did that go?
Once Michael and Colin and myself we had the beats of the story down, which took a long time to do, but we figured out, every beat scene by scene. Then we would each kind of take a turn with it, so that one of us in isolation would write it for, the next week or week and a half. They would do the next section of it and then pass it along to the next person who could then rewrite the entire thing. While doing the next stretch of it. And so at the end of it, it was something that we had all, agreed on after much argument and much rewriting of each other, but it was kind of concentrated down to what we knew was working. We wanted it to not feel kind of like your basic big studio comedy. We wanted to have that tightness to it, jokes happening over other people's lines, and kind of have it feel like how it feels when friends are in a room arguing or making jokes or something like that, to have it kind of feel true to life but sped up so that the audience is almost running to catch up with it. And then they start to like running to catch up with it.
That's fantastic.
And also working with Robbie, the director, while we're writing the script and while we're putting the story together, really helps us make sure that we're hitting the emotional points and we're hitting the story points, and he can actually shoot it. And so, we're not writing scenes that are going to cost our entire budget. So we're able to be in conversation with the director, and that really helped us get the tone and visual style of the film present in the script that made an easy translation to the screen.
Nice. So what were some of the biggest challenges or biggest surprises that you found when shooting actually began throughout the whole process?
It was very challenging. There was no time or money to make any mistakes, so everything was plotted meticulously. Things happened like it would rain, right. And I think the cinematographer was a little unhappy, and he would walk away.
Oh, wow.
And which is fair because it was very rough, sure. But we didn't really have a budget to do anything else, so we just had to keep shooting. Would have like a smoke machine that for a scene, and it would go off in a studio, and we would lose half our day because it set the fire alarm off and
shut
the fire
down an entire building.
Yeah. But honestly, shooting went very, very smoothly overall, and editing took a long time.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice. How long was the post-production process on it?
Post-production was about 6.5, 7 months. We were doing it was what we called living room film because nobody was getting paid to edit it, really. And we had to do it in our free time. And, shooting is easy because I had an amazing script and I had an excellently planned out movie. But editing can be, endless choices. And
right. Yeah. I think an editor is always the third writer. Right, so the three writers are a writer, the director, and the editor. And so that was the final really collaborative effort of the film, was us all sitting together with Robbie and with the editor and going through the movie and making sure that jokes that don't work weren't in the movie, or jokes that did work, we kind of spaced out. We actually learned this from, I think Adam McKay and Will Ferrell did this with their comedy. They screened it and they taped the laughter. And so they knew when they were telling jokes over laughter. And so we did that with our friends. We sat down with like 20 people and taped the laughter. And so we made sure that our pacing wasn't too fast, that we would miss jokes or that we were spending too long on a joke. That was a great piece of advice we picked up from them.
Perfect. That's awesome. So what's next for Trivia? And I know you guys said that you had some streaming options planned in the future, but is there any more festivals that's going to be playing at in the coming months? Or
Lone Star. Yeah, we're going to Lone Star in Dallas-Fort Worth, I think, next week. And then, we're looking to stream it after that, kind of for the holidays on Vimeo On Demand and then Amazon.
Right. It's secretly a Christmas movie. It takes place in the few weeks before Christmas, so we're going to release it right after Thanksgiving. In that, like, if you don't like Christmas, you're, like, depressed, and it's cold, and it probably hasn't snowed, and so it's gray, and you're like, what's the point of this anyways? That's the tone of the movie. Yeah.
It's a great December 7th movie.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Plus, you'll learn a lot of interesting facts and stuff throughout it. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for chatting with me, and congratulations on such a great film. And where can people find Trivia Night online? Where, like, your online presence and everything?
Yeah, if you go to www.trivianightfilm.com, you can find out any type of news about the film. Also, you can follow us on @TriviaNightFilm on Twitter and Instagram.
And our sketch comedy group where we started was Local Empire. So just look up Local Empire on YouTube and you'll be taken to our channel, or Some Guy's Weird Basement Confessions.
Perfect. Well, I'll put all the links to that in the show notes of this episode as well. And thanks again, guys, and hope you have a great rest of the festival.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep. Good night.
And so we're going to kind of round out this episode by talking about the documentaries that we saw. And Tiny, if I'm not mistaken, you are kind of fond of the old documentary genre, aren't you?
Is that a reputation that I have? I don't know.
It kind of is, yeah.
I don't know why I would. No, obviously this is the good stuff. This is the good stuff. No, there were about 20 documentaries I wanted to see, of course. I got to see 3 of them, which I was pretty happy with.
Nice.
The first one I want to talk about was my most anticipated screening, the one that I was looking forward to the most for the whole festival. It's USS Indianapolis: The Legacy. I was really looking forward to it because it's just about such an incredible story, and it's something that's loosely but somewhat related to the city where I was born and raised, Indianapolis. And it's a story that I don't think a lot of people don't know enough about. I didn't know enough about it. I knew some of the broad strokes of the sinking of the USS Indianapolis, but I didn't know enough. I didn't realize the importance of that ship before it sank. I mean,
Did you not know about that?
I did not know.
Really?
I didn't realize that it was FDR's like flagship for like over a year. I didn't realize that it delivered the bomb.
I didn't know that about FDR, but yeah, the bomb, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I mean, I was grossly undereducated on the USS Indianapolis. So the story in and of itself is amazing. And in this documentary, it's not just one story. It's not just about the sinking. It's about so many different things. They even bring it up in the documentary about how, if you made this up and wrote a story about it, people probably wouldn't like it because it would be like unbelievable. Like,
right.
No one would believe that it could happen. But it's not just one thing. It's not just about a boat sinking. It's about there's so many different stories that revolve around this ship and this event, and it's really remarkable. So just that right there makes it a great movie. But from a filmmaking standpoint, I was blown away by the documentary because they've been making it for like 15 years. And it involves 104 interviews that they did over 10 years. And they've, I assume, spent the last 5 years editing them all together. That is a remarkable undertaking. And you're talking about interviewing people who survived the worst event of their life, or like if you try to imagine a horrible event, like this would be at the top of the list for one of the most awful things you could endure.
Right.
It's incredible the trauma that these men survived. And so to get them to talk about it years later, and, you know, they're all old men, that's, you know, they're dealing with the difficulties of being an old man and trying to tell the story. It's just amazing what they accomplished with the documentary. As I was watching it, and like as it first started, it really kind of throws you, because with that much content, the editing of this documentary has to be very quick and very sharp and abrupt and sudden. Everything just it has a very quick edited nature to it, and it can really throw you at first, and it threw me at first, and I would have preferred to kind of stay on these individual stories and flesh them out, and then move on to another story, and then another story, or another interview, if you will. But it's like there's a cut like every 2 or 3 seconds, it feels like, or every 5 seconds.
Right.
And at first I was not really feeling it, and it really threw me. But after 20 minutes or so, I was like, you know what? That's the only choice they had with this documentary, and they did a good job putting all of this together and editing everything together. And it's to the point where one of these survivors will start a sentence, and then another survivor will finish it. So I mean that sounds complex and that sounds jarring, but it worked. It really worked with this movie, and I think it worked because of the gravitas of the situation and the intensity of the people telling it and everything. I think that's what made it work. And normally I wouldn't have been a fan of it, but of that style of editing and that style of filmmaking, but it worked for this movie, and I think it was the right choice given how much quality content they had with the 104 interviews. So yeah. It was really well done, and I'm really glad somebody made this. It took 80 years or whatever from the event happening to now, but I think that amount of time was needed in order for the full story to develop. You know, a lot of these guys talked about how they'd never talked about this event for 20 years, 30 years, 50 years.
Right.
You know, it took them forever to tell even their wives about it, or to even talk to each other about it. It's one of those things that I think the timing of it and how long ago the story was is critical to the story being told. And so it feels like this was just like a perfect confluence of events to have this documentary happen. And I know that part of the festival, they actually screen this. They screen this documentary at least once at the like the amphitheater that's at the War Memorial here in Indianapolis, that's just an incredible kind of full circle thing. And I would have loved to have seen it there, but I was more than happy to see it where I did in the theater, and I'm really happy that it was a packed theater. It was sold out.
Yeah.
One of the producers was there. An honorary survivor was there. We got to hear them talk and hear a Q&A with them. It was an incredible experience, and I could tell that everyone in the theater really enjoyed it. I loved it. And it comes out on DVD and Blu-ray in the next couple weeks, I think.
It actually comes out on DVD.
Okay.
I don't believe it'll have a Blu-ray release, but
gotcha.
It comes out on DVD on November 15th.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you can actually pre-order it now on Amazon. It's $16.99.
Nice. And I'll be ordering it and watching it again. I really love the movie, and I'm really honored, basically, to have been a part of this screening and getting to see it in the theater, and having that experience was awesome. I really loved it.
Yeah, I was there too, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I don't know if I mentioned that or not. Sorry.
Right. No, that's fine. We saw it with my brother, actually. My brother was there too.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed it too.
Nice.
I thought it was really great. Just the way that the narrative flowed through all the snippets and everything. Like Tiny said, the way that it was edited together was really pretty remarkable. Because about halfway through it, I kind of realized like these aren't like, we're not seeing like dramatic interpretations of it, or there's not like this disassociated voice, or this voice that's telling us like, oh, this ship was here, and like there's no like build up to it. It's literally cut together interviews to make a narrative through the interviews, and it's like it's the most direct way to get a very real sense of what happened and everything about the story. And I thought that it was just really remarkable how they were able to edit that together in such a way. I thought it was really well done.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Good movie.
Yep, I agree. And what else did you see?
Up next, I saw Reengineering Sam, which is another link to Indianapolis. All three of these documentaries that I'm going to mention actually have links to Indiana, which was, again, a special thing. Reengineering Sam is a documentary about the race car driver and now race team owner Sam Schmidt, who suffered a spinal injury in a race car accident about 16, 17 years ago. And he broke his neck and he became a quadriplegic. He only has the use of his head and neck. He's bound to a wheelchair and everything. It's about him, but it's also about how a team of scientists and engineers managed to outfit a Corvette to have Sam drive it. He literally drives a Corvette around the Indianapolis Motor Speedway with his head. It's a remarkable feat. And it meant a lot to me because I was actually in attendance at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway during qualifications for the 100th running of the Indianapolis 500, where they actually put him on the track and he did laps around the Motor Speedway in this Corvette. And not only did he do laps, he hit like 153, 155 miles an hour.
Oh, wow.
In a Corvette without touching the steering wheel and without touching the pedals. And I think the top speed for a Vette is like 160. 165.
Jeez.
So he was like topping out a Corvette with his head, with his brain. And that, like, as I was sitting there, I was like, holy crap, that's pretty wild. And, there was a guy riding with him over the loudspeaker telling us what was going on. And it was a pretty cool experience. I was like, wow, that's cool. And I had heard of Sam Schmidt. I didn't know a lot about him, but, obviously, the documentary meant a lot to me for that reason, by the fact that I got to actually experience part of it in real life, and the IMS means a lot to me growing up in Speedway, and I haven't missed a race since 1999, and so all those things together made it pretty special, just on a personal level for me. Nice. And I'm glad that it's also a pretty good documentary. It's really cool seeing. They again, there's multiple stories within this one documentary about how Sam Schmidt had his rise as a race car driver, and he was really just starting his career when this injury happened. And despite the fact that he became a quadriplegic, he stayed in the racing world as a team owner, and he's really successful as a team owner.
Nice.
And he continues to be successful. So he didn't let his injury really debilitate him as a person. He's still very successful now. And just the story of his family and the engineering team and the scientists creating this car. It's just incredible that someone with this disability has the ability to not only drive a car, but drive a car at 150 miles an hour around a racetrack. That's just a remarkable thing. And it's the first time it's ever been done. People probably never thought anything like this could ever happen, and these people did it. So it's just a really cool story, and Sam Schmidt's a cool guy. His family's great. His surgeon, who is depicted in this, was involved with this documentary, is a really, really interesting person, and it's just a great story, and I'm, again, really happy that I got to see it, and I got to experience some of the story in real life. It's a pretty cool thing, and again, I hope it gets a wide release and people get to see it. It's a good movie.
Nice. That's awesome. That's Reengineering Sam. And what was the last documentary that you saw?
The last one I saw it's called When War Comes Home. It's about a group of service members, military members who are dealing with post-traumatic stress and the mental and neurological injuries or difficulties with having survived a war. And it's linked to Indiana because one of the soldiers that's featured lives in Anderson, Indiana, and is from Anderson, Indiana. It talks about it depicts these 3 soldiers, about them getting out of the military and being out of the military, but still suffering all these mental and neurological issues as a result of what they experienced in war. And it's a very controversial topic right now, and it's very in the news, and it's an important subject right now, as it should be. And I think I appreciated the documentary that it shined a light on a lot of the positive outcomes of researching this problem. Mm-hmm. You hear about a lot of negative stuff. You hear about the fact that suicide amongst military members is at a shocking and disturbingly high number. Mm-hmm. You hear about a lot of the troubles and the torture that these people go through, basically. But it's good to see that the 3 people depicted in this documentary are having success with dealing with their issues. And there's a lot of hardship too, and they have setbacks and problems. It's not all sunshine and rainbows, but there's a lot of positive things and improvements that these soldiers experience. So it was really inspirational in that respect. It also, 2 out of 3 of the soldiers depicted have service dogs that are kind of part of their therapy, which I love dogs, again, just on a personal level. I really loved how I'm just really touched by the fact that these people are getting better because of their relationship with a dog. Like, that's just incredible to me, and I think that's incredibly touching, and it's just a beautiful thing, and I'm glad that it's gaining so much traction as a form of therapy lately, because I can see why it's effective. And so that part just really, again, on a personal level, spoke to me, and I really appreciated that. It's also just a really good documentary. They kind of talk about all the hardships and the bad stuff, but they shine a light on the positive things that the military and the government is doing to try to counteract all this neurological damage that's being done to these service members. I'm glad to see that the Army and Navy and Air Force and Marines are investing so much money in dealing with this, because they owe it to these people to, for their sacrifice. They owe it to them to give them the ability to deal with the scenarios they put them in, and how to deal with those after the fact. And I can say now that at this point, maybe not in the past, but now the government and the military is taking it seriously, and they're investing millions of dollars into it, as they should be. And for a lot of service members, it's working, and it's having a positive effect. I just hope they can get to a point where they can help everyone, and it's helping the entire psychological community, not just service members. It's a great thing, and I thought it was a really interesting documentary. One thing I'll say, though, that really threw me was they had some kind of like reenactments of events that the soldiers went through. But the reenactments were filmed with the actual people. It was very odd that they had like these people who are suffering from neurological trauma. You have them recreating moments where they're going through neurological trauma. It was very odd. I really didn't understand it. I just thought it was an odd choice, and it seemed kind of disingenuous. Like I would have much preferred that they actually like hire actors and have, in the bottom right-hand corner put reenactment, and as they're telling us the story, show us a reenactment. It was just very weird that they had like this actual soldier who threatened his wife with a gun doing a reenactment of threatening his wife with a gun. Like, what? Are you serious? I thought it was really odd and just kind of almost like in poor taste, I would say. It really threw me, and I just thought it was odd. But other than those couple examples, it's like just a few minutes out of this documentary, I think it was really well done and a very cohesive and concise story. I think they did a good job. Other than that.
Nice. I agree. I saw this as well, and actually I interviewed the director, Michael King, along with a couple of the subjects Emmanuel Bernardin, which I'm pretty sure I mispronounced his name in the interview.
Okay.
But he was nice enough not to say it. And he also had his service dog there.
Awesome.
Which was cool. And I also interviewed Andrea Carlisle, the woman from Anderson.
Awesome.
Yeah, so you'll hear that after I go through my documentaries. But yeah, I agree about the reenactments, definitely. But I didn't have a problem with them or anything, or I didn't take issue with them, or it didn't register with me, because it was kind of juxtaposed with, like in that example, Andrea was telling her story like to the camera as well, and just like what gripped me about it, and I talk about this in the interview as well, was just how raw the story of these people and what they're going through. Like, they shared it with the camera, and you can see them share like they're bearing their souls about what happened and how they dealt with the hardships that they had. Just completely honest and straightforward and straight to the camera, and it's really remarkable how that was done.
Nice.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it, and you'll hear an interview here in a bit. But first I'm gonna go through some of the documentaries I saw, and then we can kind of call it a night. So first up is High School 911, which is a really interesting documentary and really interesting subject for them to cover. It's basically a documentary about it chronicles a year in the life of the only ambulance service in Darien, Connecticut, that just happens to be run by high school teenagers. So this was directed by Tim Warren, and it's interesting because the footage was shot, I think it was 9 years ago. So the actual like video is not like super HD or anything, but the subject and the stories that they go through are really interesting. And when they say, like, when you hear like this is the only ambulance service in Darien, Connecticut that is also run, and it is run by high school teenagers, that's not to say like, oh, okay, a bunch of teenagers volunteer to do the EMT stuff and, you know, like as an after school activity. It's no, the entire organization, the entire EMT service, the ambulance service, is run by teenagers.
Wow.
It's like a whole organization. Like, there are a couple like there's some adults involved in it, obviously, but the entire, from everything, it's all teenager run, and it's really interesting. And Darien, Connecticut is not like 200, like 2,000 people town. This is a 20,000 resident community.
Jeez.
And that ambulance service, this organization that it does, it's called Post 53. It runs 365 days a year. When there are scenes of the kids in school, and like the ones that are on call, if their pager goes off, they immediately run out, and they have the ambulance parked right outside the school, and they go and they do their thing.
Wow.
It's really remarkable, and it's really fascinating, and it focuses on several different characters or different subjects. And at the screening, they actually had one of them, since it was 9 years ago, like he was talking about, like, well, yeah, now I'm he's going into med school and all that stuff. It was just really kind of interesting to see that.
Right.
But yeah, it was a really interesting documentary, and you can find it on Twitter at it's @_high school 911. It's really good. I really enjoyed it.
Nice. That's one that I'm sad I missed, and I think there was a lot of buzz about it. I think there were a lot of people, like, within the film festival, a lot of people talking about this one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They actually added one or two screenings to it also, and that was really cool.
I hope I get to see it at some point.
Yeah, it was very interesting.
Cool.
Yeah, and then the next one, this was, it's so hard to pick a favorite, but this documentary maybe like this was a very interesting documentary. It's called Dramatic Escape. Directed by Nick Kasted, and it's basically the plot summary is Dramatic Escape transports the viewer into the lives of a group of maximum security inmates at Sing Sing Correctional Facility in New York as they attempt to mount a behind bars stage production of A Few Good Men. And this documentary was I'd be very fascinated to hear what you think of it, Tiny.
Nice.
It is a really fascinating documentary. It's about it's this group. It's not like a group of prisoners are just like, hey, let's do a play, guys. We don't have anything else going on. It's a rehabilitation program that is going on in the correctional facility. It's called Rehabilitation Through the Arts. And in this case, like they have people that have been involved in productions year after year, inmates and everything. And what really fascinated me about this was that you have subjects, you have these people who committed crimes who they don't have any problem admitting, yeah, I murdered this guy.
Wow.
They're very open about it, but they are involved in this creative endeavor, this theatrical thing, and it is very much a theatrical production, which is just something that's fascinating and terrifying to me, because all the things that come together to put together a play on stage, a live performance, is remarkable. Like the amount of effort that goes into it is just astounding, and that's just all theater, really.
Wow.
And you complicate that by putting it in a prison and have it be all prisoner run, and then also, like they point out in the documentary that it's for a prison audience. So like if they don't like you, they will let you know. There's not like a they're not going to be quiet about it or anything. So you have to be on your game.
Mm-hmm.
And what really fascinated me was that these people, these subjects, these inmates, they are, since they're in this stage production program, like they have this and they also have the time, obviously, that they've been serving to reflect on who they are and why they're there and what they've done in their life and everything. There are some amazing moments where these people just tell the camera, tell us as audience members, just outlining like who they are, what they've done, why they're there, and they go into this really intense reflective mode where they talk about, just it's not agenda driven or anything like that. It's purely just a sociological thing where they're talking about their experiences and how they've come to terms with it. There's a moment where one of the subjects, he's talking about it, and he's talking about how he murdered a man, and he goes into this whole thing where he's like, I made his family victims. He's a victim. I made his family victims, and I made my family victim to it, and I made myself a victim to it because I did this thing. And like there's a moment where he's like, I can't even say his name. It's just like unbelievably raw and emotional, and it's incredible. It's really incredible. And then there's also, it's juxtaposed with some kind of funny, weirdly funny moments. There's like a whole sequence where like there's a whole like scene where they're in the freaking yard of the prison. Mm-hmm. And you see like in the background throughout the entire sequence, you see people working out, playing basketball, like the epitome of like what prison on film is, like really
hardened criminals
doing that. And then you see people just running lines from A Few Good Men.
That does sound really funny.
It's so funny,
situationally funny.
Yeah, and it's really interesting, and you learn a little bit about each person. And it's funny because there's one person that I swear to God, like like the way that he talked about it, like he was saying like, yeah, I was, I could have gotten to the drug game, but I decided to just be a stick-up artist, and I only went after people that were in the game and everything. I'm like, this is freaking Omar Little from The Wire. What the hell? But yeah, it was really amazing, and to see them all come together and put together this performance that, it was really awe-inspiring. It was really interesting, and I mean, the acting that they showed from the stage was really, really remarkable.
Wow.
Yeah, and just also it's just there's kind of this they don't call attention to it or anything, but I thought it was kind of interesting that like the production that they chose for that season was A Few Good Men. It's like it's such a weird juxtaposition of, prisoners putting on A Few Good Men. It's really fascinating as a sociological experiment there.
Wow, that sounds really good.
It was amazing. And you can find information about it at facebook.com/dramatic escape documentary.
Okay.
Yeah, and it was really good. I mean, if it gets a release somewhere, I'll buy it.
Nice.
Because it's really pretty remarkable.
Cool.
So let's see. So next up, and these next two will be brief, and then we can call it a night here. The next up is another prison focused documentary. It's called They Call Us Monsters. Mm-hmm. Okay, so this is directed by Ben Lear. And I'll read a quick plot description. In California, violent juveniles between 14 and 17 years old can be tried as adults. Typically, they are accused of heinous crimes, murders, and attempted murders that leave their victims' families shattered. And yet they are still kids with a greater capacity for change and one day return to society. Behind the walls of the compound, 3 violent juvenile offenders are writing a movie as they await their trials. So this documentary... I saw the first screening of one of my days at Heartland, which was like the last movie I saw before this was the day before, and I saw Dramatic Escape. So it was kind of interesting that paired up that way. This didn't hook me as much as Dramatic Escape, mm-hmm. I'm afraid, but it was still interesting in and of itself. The thing about it that kind of didn't resonate that well with me is that it kind of like we're introduced to the idea of them writing the screenplay. It's this program that this guy comes in and teaches them screenwriting, but it doesn't really go into like. I kind of wish that there was more of an emphasis on that element of it. Like there's hardly any setup to it. It's just like you see the screenwriter come in and he's like he actually says to one of the people, I've never taught before, and then there's not really much of any information about it, and then you see him, trying to get them to, work on the screenplay and everything, and it's interesting. It's interesting. You see some interesting things here and there about their experiences and their life in prison, and it's interesting in and of itself. There's one character that one subject of it that I mean. It's kind of unfair because these are juveniles. These are between 14 and 17 years old. So,
right. Like
they're teenagers, and I mean, and they're also incarcerated. So there's like a little bit of an expectation for them to not be, likable or anything. But right. There's like not like I mean, I could not like. There's one character that character. I keep saying character. One subject that I just didn't like. It was just like I couldn't find any resonance with him. I couldn't find any way in to really care about his journey throughout the documentary, mm-hmm. which is a shame because they focus a little bit on his case and how he goes to trial. And this was a part of the documentary that I thought would have been was a hands down the best part of the documentary for me, and I wish that there was more dealt with there. I won't give away what happens or what the outcome is or anything, but suffice it to say, his family had a lawyer that was working his case, and then there's a piece where or there's a part of the documentary where they're like, okay, well, this guy wasn't doing us any good preparing for the trial, so we went ahead and hired this new attorney who she's supposed to be really good and everything. And then like there's just a quick cut to see that she's like a Better Call Saul type of attorney.
Oh, okay.
Like kind of like flashy, like
ambulance chaser.
Yeah. And it's like you can see like that's not a good idea, guys.
Right. And
then like as it goes through, like it made me kind of care about his situation a little more, but it also was like I can't really find a way into the story with this. I thought it was okay. It didn't really perform as well as I was really hoping it would for me. And you can find more information about it at facebook.com/theycallusmonstersdoc. And okay, I'll round out this episode really with Off the Rails, which is a documentary about every episode of The Obsessive Viewer. That's not. I'm stupid.
You said that.
I did. Yeah. Anyway, Off the Rails is directed by Adam Irving, and it tells the remarkable true story of Darius McCullum, a man with Asperger's syndrome whose overwhelming love of transit has landed him in jail 32 times for impersonating New York City bus drivers and subway conductors.
I thought that one sounded pretty cool. I didn't get to see it.
It was really interesting. It was kind of unique in the way that it showed how he, like, it depicted his love of transit and trains and the transit system really well. And it was kind of sad because he has, like, he is on the spectrum. He has Asperger's. So he has this obsessive love and encyclopedic knowledge of all things transit. That's what calms him. That's what he has a connection to in this world, essentially. That's the way it's depicted. And it's really captivating to see that. The problem is that, compulsion is to commandeer these vehicles. Like he is arrested, obviously, as according to the description, 32 times, for, like, he hijacks a bus, and it's like and they show a moment where he's at, like, the bus, like the bus yard where they park all the buses, the bus depot, and he's like, he goes and he's like, yeah, you can just go in. There's no key or anything for it because it's a public transportation, so you just press a button and just go. And it's not like he goes for a joyride or anything. He goes and he does the routes.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really fascinating in that respect.
That's wild.
It is. And what's frustrating, what's interesting is that he, like, there's a moment, like, throughout the documentary, I'm sitting there thinking, like, well, why doesn't he just, try to get a job there? Because that would solve everything. But, like, he can't, like, the New York City Department of Transportation or whoever's hiring him, the MTA, finds him a liability, and they don't want to hire him. So he has this compulsion to keep doing this, commandeering, commandeering trains and buses. And as a result, he has spent a majority of his adult life in prison, for these crimes. And it's really fascinating to see that. But also part of my, police upbringing, it just makes me, like, in my head throughout the documentary, I was just like, man, just don't do it. And it's just, I mean, come on, man. But it's really fascinating to reconcile that thought process with the fact that he has this condition that makes it a compulsion to him. Like, It's really fascinating to watch. And this is actually one of the documentaries that is on the short list for the Oscars. It's for Oscar consideration.
Interesting.
Yeah, as well as I believe USS Indianapolis is also on that list as well.
Cool.
So yeah, I thought it was pretty good. It wasn't the strongest documentary that I saw, but it was really interesting, and I enjoyed it. And it was a really fascinating documentary.
Cool.
Yep. So I think that will about do it for us. We're gonna throw it to. Before we go, here is my interview with the director and two of the subjects from When War Comes Home. And after that, we'll wrap up and call it a night, which I've said like 4 times. Okay, so I'm here with Michael King, the director of When War Comes Home, and 2 of the stars of the documentary, Emmanuel Bernardine and Andrea Carlisle from Indiana, actually. So why don't you guys introduce yourselves or tell us about the documentary and how it came to be?
My name's Michael King. 3 years ago, I was invited to visit NICO, National Intrepid Center of Excellence, which is a state-of-the-art facility for service members that are suffering from post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury. Some of the treatments are virtual reality, music therapy, acupuncture, and I met and interviewed with Spencer Milo, who drove 6 hours from Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, to meet with me. And after meeting with Spencer, I I was so impressed that I needed to think about the film because it takes like 3.5 years to make, so I needed to really connect internally with if I could be motivated to do this story and do it right. And I found some things that inspired me. One, my father was in the Air Force for 40 years. The other, I grew up in a military town in New London, Connecticut, where we have the submarine base and the Coast Guard Academy. And this was actually the motivation for me to go ahead and want to give back. Even though I didn't serve in the military, I figure I could serve this way by telling and giving the service members a voice.
That's fantastic, and that resonates with me because my parents were both in the Marine Corps, and so I kind of grew up in kind of a very military-minded family. Like they were both retired by the when I was born, but just it kind of was all a big part of my upbringing was military focused stuff. And one thing that I really admire about the documentary and really love about it is that it's about post traumatic stress, but it puts such a human face on it, and it puts an emphasis on how it can affect people, like all types of families, and what like the spouses and the families of the soldiers and everything. And that's just something that I thought was really poignant, and it resonated a lot. And I thought that it was just a really fantastic documentary. And so, what was the biggest, I guess, struggle of putting it together? Like, were there any like issues or any interesting things that came up that you incorporated into the documentary throughout it?
Well, it's always difficult making any type of film unless you have financing in place, and also finding the right subjects. I was very fortunate to have Andrea Carlisle, who's written a book on the subject matter and who lives in Anderson, Indiana, and then finally Emmanuel, who represented the U.S. Navy, and who's African American, which gave me a little broader reach in terms of different services and diversity.
Of course, nice. And one of the big parts of the documentary was the service dogs, and I loved seeing how that. How that, I guess, treatment would be the word to use, but how that can be such an effective tool for helping with it, and so could you tell us about your service dog and your history with having the service dog and everything? There's a really great kind of introduction to it, where there's a great moment where you talk about how you got the dog. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely, Matt. First and foremost, thank you very much for having me. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to help raise awareness on the issues that surround our veterans by promoting this film. This film is very, very near and dear to me, being that the time when Michael reached out to me, I was presently living, within that darkness. I was presently in the space of suicide. I was actively dealing with depression, and all I had at the time was my service dog, and it was as filter free as you could have it. Because here I was dealing with all of this. All I knew was I had this dog, and no one really cared for our story or our recovery or our therapy. And then out the blue, an angel calls me and says, "Hey, a friend of yours from your therapy group called me and he talked to me about you and your dog, and if you would allow me to, I would like to help share your story. So for those that are presently going through what you're living with, that have a service dog or are curious about getting a service dog to help change their life, if you would allow me to, I would please like to help share your story, to help inspire others." And all I could truly say is, God doesn't call the qualified; He qualifies the call.
That's fantastic, and thank you so much for sitting down and interviewing with me and everything, and also thank you for your service as well. It's obviously really appreciated. And so, Andrea, you you wrote a book about every, and I was kind of surprised when I saw in the credits. I was like, I'm gonna need to pick that up. So, can you tell us a little bit about your experience with writing the book and about getting in touch with Michael for the film?
Sure. Thank you, Matt, so much for having me as well. I wrote the book. I started in 2010, and I just started writing down my thoughts of what I'd went through. I apologize, 2011. And I just found that it was kind of therapy for me. So once I started writing, I just couldn't stop. And I never really intended it to be a book because, you're putting a lot of really, really, tough subject out there that's very personal. And I didn't know how people would take reading that, and I didn't know how I feel about sharing that publicly. But through the process, I found that, people need to know that they're not alone. And I wanted to be a voice for the spouse because I think there's a lot of attention, and it's very rightfully so, to the veteran. It's needed. It's wanted. We need more. But also, this is a phenomenon that affects the spouse and children as well. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to write it from the view of what it was like to live with someone with PTSD that, from the spouse's point of view. And so that was kind of my point. And I had a gentleman come up to me at my church and say, I really think you should get this published. And I was like, well, I'm not an author. And so he said, well, really, I think you should. I think it's going to touch people's lives. And so I prayed about it, thought about it, and was like, well, talk to my husband about it first. And he wasn't on board at first, but then he's like, if it helps one family, it's worth it. That we can take our experience and turn it into something good. Mm-hmm. And so Michael found the book somehow and called me up and sent me an email. And he said, I'm Michael King from something, and Emmy award-winning filmmaker. And I'm from Indiana, so people from Indiana don't get calls like that. So right. I thought it was a scam, and I ignored it. Mm-hmm. And then, 2 weeks later, it came up again somehow, and I was like, oh, maybe I will just call this number just for fun. And I did, and it was legit, and I'm so honored and proud to be a part of this because it is so impactful, so moving. I mean, he couldn't have done a better job of telling our story, getting, our point of view in there. And, you see films and people could be exploited. Mm-hmm. And he just told our story in such a beautiful way, and I'm sure the other cast members feel the same way, and I just think it's going to make a huge impact and awareness for PTS.
I agree completely. I watched the film last night, and it was just heart-wrenching. There was a rawness to the stories that you guys shared in the film that just resonated so much to me as a viewer, and it's definitely an important subject and an important topic to really get across to a wide audience. And I'm really glad that you made the film and that it has the opportunity to be seen by so many people. And having said that, we're here at Heartland Film Festival. Are there plans for other film festivals? Is he going to be making the rounds on the festival circuit anymore, or?
Well, we're leaving after the screening tomorrow, which is our U.S. premiere, to go to the New York City for the USS Intrepid to have our world premiere. So we're very excited about that, especially Andrea. She can't stop talking about it. We made it. Anyways, and then right after that, we're going to West Point, Emmanuel and I, to screen for the cadets up there. And then we'll be screening at various VSOs, film festivals, and museums, military museums. And so another 6 months of traveling.
Sure.
And then we have a release, a video-on-demand release that's going to happen on Veterans Day.
Oh, that's fantastic.
November 11th. So if you go to our website, www.whenwarcomeshome.org, you could pick up the details on the video on demand release.
Perfect, and I'll make sure I put a link to that in the show notes, and I'll put all the pertinent information. And as we're winding down, what is your guys' experience with Heartland been? How have you guys felt about the festival and all that?
Well, I love it. I've never been to a film festival. I've been to festivals, but sure. Blueberry, strawberry, but never a film festival. Sure. So I'm amazed. It's just the way everything is just the top notch and just very friendly, and everyone just makes you feel, special. And so I encourage everybody to come out to this. This is absolutely fantastic.
Nice.
This is Bronze and I's actual first film festival. The welcoming has been, I can't compare it to anything else I've ever experienced before. This is truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Not just that, but to attend a film festival, but, I think the capstone on top of that is actually being a part of a film that's in a film festival, that I truly believe in what the film delivers, and I truly believe in everyone that's involved in the film. And to be a part of a film that has that much power on a platform such as Heartland, that has such a large footprint, I couldn't ask for any bigger of a blessing.
That's great, yeah. All right, well, thank you guys so much for sitting down and chatting with me, and best of luck with the film and with everything going forward. And have a great rest of the festival.
Thank you. Thank you, Matt.
Yep.
You made it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, and that about does it for our Heartland 2016 episode. And Tiny, what are your overall thoughts on Heartland?
Again, it's an incredible event that I'm just impressed with how well it runs, and they get some fantastic movies. Again, there's probably 20 movies that I'm really bummed I didn't get to see.
Me too.
Last year I only saw like 3 movies. This year I saw 6 or 7. Mm-hmm. Next year, I'm hoping to take at least
15.
Next year, I'm hoping to take at least a day or two off during the week, and then including the weekends, I'm hoping I can hit 10 or so, if not more. Just because every year I'm like, man, I wish I would have seen this and seen this and seen this. So it's just a great event, and it's worth taking vacation days to go see movies. So
absolutely,
they did a great job. I'm looking forward to next year.
Do you want to hear something funny?
Sure.
I don't think you're going to see any of them next year.
I know,
because it is from October 13th. To the end of the next week.
That is the worst timing possible.
Exactly.
I'm getting married October 14th next year.
I don't know what your honeymoon situation is like, but I don't know if you'll be available.
So I don't know. Maybe that'll be our honeymoon, is going to Heartland.
Yeah.
It has the word heart in the title.
Right.
Love.
Ooh.
And hearts.
Well, I already know my gift to you is going to be your press pass. Nice. Awesome. Save a lot of money.
Yeah, I had a great time, and thank you so much to everyone involved at Heartland. It was just great time.
Yep, I had a great time too, and I took the whole week off, but I just got so bombarded with other wasn't feeling that well at the end. So hopefully next year I can really tackle it and really take it by storm.
Nice.
So, having said all that, we're going to throw it to the pre-recorded outro. But once again, just so you guys know, you can find all of the links and everything to the movies we discussed and more information about Heartland itself in the show notes of this episode, which once again can also be found at obsessiveviewer.com/OV191. And before we go, just a quick reminder that I have a solo side project podcast that is not included in the pre-recorded outro you're about to hear. It's called Anthology. It's a podcast exploring science fiction and anthology storytelling, beginning with The Twilight Zone. And currently I'm doing bonus episodes reviewing Black Mirror, including the new season that just premiered on October 21st. So having said all that, Tiny, what are we doing next week?
I think we're in honor of the election, we're going to talk about fictional presidents.
Yes. Or depending on how the election shakes out, post-apocalyptic movies. All right. Having said all that, thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, I forgot. I used to say that. Oh, boy.
All right. Thanks, guys. If you like what you hear and want to support the podcast, you can head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review. The more ratings and reviews we get, the easier it will be for people to find the show in iTunes and search results. And if you want to show your support with your wallet, you can either click the donate button in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com for a one-time donation or a recurring donation. Or you can become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer, where you can choose from several different reward tiers. The fine folks over at Midwest Podcast Network, they did that, and that they're now sponsoring our episodes. Their Westworld FM podcast is now sponsoring us. So go check that out. Go check that podcast out. And also, if you want to support us, go to patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. And any donations made will help pay the fees to keep the podcast running, and so that we can continue to provide you with our weekly podcast.
Thank you for listening to The Obsessive Viewer, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. You can find more of our episodes at ovpodcast.com, and you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Stitcher, or your preferred podcast app. The Obsessive Viewer's theme song is An Eclipse of Events and is provided by Loudlike from their EP Mistakes We Must Make. You can find that and more great music from them on iTunes and like their Facebook page at facebook.com/loudlikemusic. Any and all feedback on the podcast is encouraged. You can email the hosts individually at Matt, Tiny, or Mike at obsessiveviewer.com, or send an email to the podcast in general at podcast@obsessiveviewer.com. Check out the Obsessive Viewer blog at obsessiveviewer.com, where we post movie and TV reviews and the occasional editorial about the business of entertainment. You can also like us on Facebook at facebook.com/theobsessiveviewer and follow us on Twitter at obsessiveviewer, at obsessivetiny, and at IamMikeWhite. If you want more obsessive content in your life, check out our sister site, obsessivebooknerd.com, for book reviews, author spotlights, and a general celebration of reading. Finally, if you're philosophically curious, check out Tiny's side project podcast, The Secular Perspective, which explores the concepts of faith, religion, and existence from the perspective of secular hosts. You can find that at thesecularperspective.com and subscribe to the podcast on the podcatcher of your choice. Again, thank you so much for listening. We love you. Be excellent to each other.